This is TWiT.
Let's talk AI. By the way, that's the kind of line an AI would come up with.
Yeah, exactly. And then say, I wouldn't have said it if you weren't such a bad person. Wait, what?
The stories of the past week, I got to say, in my opinion, the real problem here is that journalists want to anthropomorphize this AI. And so they...
I'm glad you said journalists, because the real problem from my perspective is literally journalists.
Yeah. They're driving it crazy. Like they're poking at it until it says something nonsensical. Because it's not a thing. It's not
let me go in a different direction. Okay, hold on.
Well, here's my opinion. It's not sentient. It's autocorrect. No. Spicy autocorrect, somebody said. And it's just predictive, and it's going. And if you drive it long enough, it starts to spout nonsense.
Yeah, but okay.
Grammatically correct nonsense, but nonsense. These journalists just wanted it to spout nonsense.
It's stupidity on both sides when it comes to journalists. So I don't know how many Microsoft events Richard and or I have been to in our lives. Let's say it's been a lot. And so for us to show up at some Microsoft event and then walk out of there like little girls screaming, oh my God, you're not going to believe it, the singularity's here, is the most immature, unsophisticated response you could possibly have to anything. And that's what we saw. And the thing that comes out after the fact is, go back and watch the tape on the Microsoft thing. That thing made more mistakes than the Google demo did.
Yeah.
But the Google demo, for some reason,
that
was all the talk.
That's because there wasn't much of a demo from Google. I mean, Google really didn't go very far.
Yeah, give it more time. I'm sure it could screw up more.
Yeah, it could screw up a lot. But a lot better.
Kevin Roos of the New York Times was so blown away by this initial thing that he declared he was switching to Bing at the time. And I was like, no, you're not. And then a week later, he writes, a week later, I've changed my mind.
Oh, no, I'm not.
I'm still fascinated by this.
Wrong both ways, right?
Deeply unsettled, even frightened by this AI's emergent abilities.
This is anthropomorphizing things.
Yeah.
This is, I expect better from these people.
Simultaneously giddy and skeptical.
I've had very intelligent friends of mine talking this way. And I'm like, listen, are you threatened when a parrot tells you you're ugly?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, parrot is arguably, not even arguably, is more sentient.
Oh, absolutely.
Steve Gibson said this yesterday.
It could actually feed itself.
Yes. He said when a parrot says Polly wants a cracker, it's actually thinking. But
if I say this, I might get a cracker.
By the way, Leo mentioned Ben Thompson, who I think is one of the most
over the top.
He lost his mind in our industry. Lost his mind.
Yeah.
Just lost his
everybody
mind.
Lost their minds in this one.
But
That's
the problem. Number one is why are you having philosophical existential debates with a piece of software? It's a search tool. Stop it.
I know. So anyway, there's that bit of embarrassment. I also, and I feel like I said this on day one, this is Bing, right? Like, shouldn't that have been the level set on this? Like, I just, whatever. So, in the past week, because I guess we're doing this week by week now, right? It's been really interesting watching Microsoft's response to all this. It is clear to me that they are almost giddy with the attention that they're getting over a product. Like I think someone that Richard might have said earlier, we just spent 20 years ignoring, and now it has gotten more attention in the past week or two or three, whatever it's been, than it has in its entire existence. Like all of a sudden, it's a going concern, And there's been a lot of overreaction inside and outside of Microsoft. They, after this thing started going off the rails after 2 long conversations, Microsoft said, "Well, fine, we'll just lower the, we'll lower the amount of time you can talk to this thing at a time, and we won't let the crazy come out." It's like this morning I described this to Brad as like you're sitting next to someone at a bar who's pounding drinks. The conversation is fantastic in the beginning, but then it gets really weird, and eventually you should just get up and leave. You don't just keep talking to these people, and you certainly don't make decisions based on anything they tell you at this point. And that's kind of what Bing AI is like.
I did have a chance to talk to a couple of folks on the inside of Microsoft, like what the heck is going on, and they talk about this thing called the token cache. Right. So I mean, each time this is about how we simulate context, and I'm using that word very deliberately because no intelligence. Right, it is simulating context by taking what you previously said and it previously responded and tokenizing it so that it can include it in its subsequent responses.
We are so easily duped.
Yeah, and the token cache is only so big.
Let me give you an example that actually verifies what you just, or is an example of what you just said. Last week on the show, I did a very small demo where I used Notion AI to say something, what would be some interesting topics for a Microsoft podcast? And reading through its response, other than the, overwriting like a kid would do in high school, I could see that it was very clearly taking information from my own notes. It was just stealing from me right there.
Sure. Well,
so I showed this to my wife and I said, let's see what it does when it has no prompting whatsoever. Absolutely worthless. It's absolutely worthless. Mm-hmm. In that case, it was something like, what are some fun things to do in Mexico City? And it's like, Mexico City is a history, is rich in history and culture, and there's great places to eat, and you should be sure to explore the city streets. And it was like, it just came up with nothing. It was just nonsense.
Which again, it's just a search engine. It's going and finding a page that seemed to fit what you were saying.
Right.
I also had the chance to read Jordi Ribas's latest commentary on that. And he's one of the VPs in the AI big space. And he's finally sort of described how they built this thing. And it's like, they were not rushing this. They've been working on this for quite some time. The question is, why did they release it? Yeah,
that is the question. Yep.
And I think it's the 100 million users.
By the way, I don't think you've ever said anything in your life that is more right than that. That is absolutely correct. I mean, the numbers on Bing are so small, and we can latch on to this success and ride this, and how much 1%, 2% share
it's all it takes
means to them. Yeah, it's astonishing.
Yeah, and anytime you can poke, in some respects, it's just like poking Google is a good day.
Yeah. And it was a perfect storm for them too, because Google just coughed up a hairball at exactly the right time.
But they're both hairballs. The question is what happens next, and that's really my concern. The correct thing to happen now is that one or the other of them blinks and says, hey, this is quite ready for a lifetime. I'm going to take that down. And then the other one will immediately. So now there's probably going to be a stare-off to say who's going to blink first. And in some ways, Google has the least to lose.
Yeah. Microsoft's talking like they're not going to do that. That's my fear.
You don't think these will get better?
No, the data set's not that good in the first place. I mean, that's the essential
problem. I mean, I think
it's too expensive for it to do it and to grow it in real time. You can't keep.
Well, more saliently, you did this as a PR play, and now it's creating bad PR.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Take it down.
By the way, that might play into the 100 million thing as well.
Yeah.
Well, this thing can't, Microsoft says, we improve this thing using the information we glean from what people are doing, searching and blah, 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 whatever. There aren't that many people doing that on Bing. Mm-hmm. This is bringing more people to the service. They may have, pragmatically is the wrong word, but they may have gone live with this thing specifically to feed it information and habits and behaviors.
Which is always useful. And if you do try and use it as a search tool, sometimes it gets reasonable results.
So I will
what reminds me of
what I said to a commenter on my website, that the bar should be higher for search results than sometimes.
You might be 100%. I agree.
But it never has been.
No, right? I agree with you. Yeah.
The Google's vulnerable because its search has gotten quite poor.
It's gotten bad.
That's right. It's been insurtified. Yeah. Absolutely true.
So it reminds me of IBM's Watson, which when it was released got a lot of attention.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It won Jeopardy, right? And
did it win? Was this different from the chess playing?
Yeah, this is a different one. But related. Deep Blue was also from
Watson
IBM.
Was derived from Deep Blue.
Yeah.
Okay.
In Deep Blue won the same way Watson won Jeopardy, which is by cleverly tailoring the algorithm for the exact purpose it was.
The pruned decision tree.
Right.
And
so it was trained to beat
have an n over n-1 problem. As soon as the data set gets too big, they tip over.
Right. So nevertheless, great success. This is the last AI spring, by the way. In the long run, Watson, even though despite lots of advertising and IBM really pushing it, they discontinued it because for a while there were stories about how it does better than a radiologist reading X-rays. No, it turned out not. And then now it's gone. And I think that's kind of. Do you think it's going to be like that, or is this yet another one of those?
I don't think it goes away. In fact, I think what will happen is we just won't talk about it anymore because these capabilities will just be everywhere. Only
if it works. You only talk about it when it breaks, right?
Yeah.
And again, artificial intelligence is how you describe a technology that doesn't work. When it does work, it gets a new name, right? We'll start calling them large language models.
Yeah.
But I would argue the counter to when are these two going to take this thing down is who's going to double down. And the logical one in that case is Google.
Yeah.
It makes Google, the thing to Google now is to release a different AI related product. A music generator, or a next generation.
I think they already did that.
But I would think something different.
Google Research released a music generator, and which is terrible. It's so bad, it's awful.
Yeah, I that was, and the headlines for that were off the charts too. It was like, this is going to be the best music you've ever.
We've all read a lot of sci-fi, and this is like VR, something the metaverse. We're all like so primed for, and turns out to be a lot harder to do.
Yeah, sure. And we want science fiction to come true,
right? And we don't have flying cars either, I might add.
Yeah,
right.
So, but I do think, I think you're right, Richard. That there's applications for this, and you just rename it, and you're going to see it slowly seep into our day-to-day life.
Spotify today released an AI-based, again, everything's AI-based, playlist creation tool. You feed it up to 30 artists, and it creates music based on the music you like, which is kind of what we've been doing with music services since there have been music services. Just like we've been doing things like spell checking, grammar checking, and word processors since there have been those products, but now it's always AI. I think the reason they don't call this stuff machine learning or large language models or whatever is that AI is something that everyone both understands and completely does not understand as a term. It's just a familiar term, and people are like, oh yeah.
It's marketing.
Supercomputers,
But okay, it's marketing. I mean, we've had this conversation before. There's algorithms that are labeled AI, and there's actual machine learning, and there's actual, I won't say AI, but there's actual machine learning where the machine makes its own rules.
Really pedantic people say, well, this is an AI. Well, this is an AI, Yeah, okay, whatever.
There's a difference between a program that a person wrote and a program that the computer generated on its own. And that would be, to me, that's the dividing line.
On its own is a bit of a stretch, right? Because that's the point of
no, AlphaGo taught itself how to play chess.
Right.
All they gave it was the rules. It taught itself how to play chess and became the best chess playing computer ever, much better than a human, in a matter of hours by playing billions of games against itself. Sure. That to me is machine learning.
It proved the 10,000 hour thing.
Well, the 10 billion hour thing.
You got it. But if you keep following the Alpha project, then you get into the interesting stuff like playing chess, playing Go, whatever. They're great demos, but AlphaFold's actually important.
Right.
And that's that same, and we're now going to take years to validate what AlphaFold produced in its last round of tests, because our current system for doing protein folding is just not as sophisticated.
Perfect example.
Yeah. But it's also a very rare example, Leo, like to actually have built software that has generated results that very likely are right. And we don't know how they generate them. They're going to be difficult to prove and have massive consequences if they are right.
Right.
Honestly, the biggest, to me, part of this story is an indictment of modern journalism. It's driven by link bait. It's driven by clicks.
But it's driven by, this is like the conversation we had around the financial impact of COVID versus post-COVID and how these companies should have known better. I don't understand that. And then you get journalists who should know better go into a room and like, oh my God. And instead of using their brains and thinking, it's so disappointing when people who should know better don't,
I would submit they know better, but there's such pressure to generate views that they pander.
Yeah, the tough part is it is actually profitable.
It's look, this is what happened to network news. Look at your local news. It's profitable. And ultimately these are all profit institutions. This is why TWiT is great, because we don't want any profit. We can't make money to save our lives. So you're not going to hear that link bait here.
Okay. Yeah, well, it's sort of, right. Yeah.
No, actually, this is serious. This is an advantage we have because there's no SEO in anything that we do.
Right.
You have to go out, find the podcast, download it, listen to something that's going to go at least 2 hours to hear it. There's no link bait that can make you listen to this show.
Right.
So there's no incentive for us to write a headline that says, you won't believe what Bing did now.
Yep. And then you're going to make like a graphic for YouTube where we're all like this, like,
yeah, by the way, that's the problem with YouTube. Exactly.
Those stupid graphics.
Yeah, that's the big problem with YouTube. It's all link bait.
It's
all
worst.
link bait. But the success of YouTube is pushing everybody else in that direction. You don't think The Verge is looking at YouTube going, we got to do more of that?
Sure.
So, I mean, this is an indictment more of and not even of journalism, of our society. We are ADD. We just want, what's next? What's the next thing? I'm seeing now on my Amazon Echo, you won't believe this 10-year-old sports writer. It's like,
yeah, he's almost as good as AI.
Yeah, they got tired of the AI story writing sports, right? So now they got a 10-year-old. This episode of Tech Break is brought to you by ACI Learning. Join an engaging IT learning community with ACI Learning and IT Pro. Hey, congratulations to Don Pizzette, IT Pro's co-founder and original edutainer, and the entire TechNado team for their 300th podcast. Good going, guys. Get your standard or premium IT Pro membership by using the code TWiT30 at checkout for 30% off.